a historic yet controversial finish at Pocono has NASCAR fans talking, so let's talk about it here on Above the Yellow Line. Tempers at Pocono were so darn high, you would have thought that we were at a short track. We're going to a short track this coming week though, Richmond, but for now let's focus on the Pocono race, starting with our winner. Denny Hamlin was your winner at Pocono. This is his second win of the season, making this back-to-back wins for Joe Gibbs Racing. Of course, Martin Truex Jr. winning at Loudon. This win also captures Denny Hamlin's 50th win in the Cup Series, making him 15th on the all-time Cup Series winners list, tied with drivers Ned Jarrett and Junior Johnson. This is also Hamlin's 7th win at Pocono, beating out the track record, and this is Toyota's 600th win in NASCAR. So a lot of history captured during this race, but it was not without its controversy. We'll start at least with the end of the race as a whole. With 2 to go in the race, Ryan Preece spun out and was kind of stuck on the apron, stalled out. I have a feeling this might have had something to do with Corey LaJoie, as there was kind of an altercation following the race. Ryan Preece approached LaJoie's car and there were some words shared. Regardless, Preece was stalled on the apron on the track with 2 to go. In my mind, this would have thrown the caution and we probably would have gone to overtime. However, what NASCAR actually did was wait it out and threw the caution as we were on that final lap as the cars were approaching Preece, who was still stalled on the track. Initially, I didn't understand at all why NASCAR didn't throw the caution right away, or at least threw it in my mind before we got that 1 to go so we could do that overtime restart. Because one thing, I know that NASCAR wants to try to finish these races under green. Instead, we ended up finishing this race under caution. However, from NASCAR's perspective, I understand wanting to wait this out a little bit to see if Preece could have got going. They didn't want to prematurely throw a caution or throw an unnecessary caution. But because of how the race ended in that way, I'm not a huge fan of when the caution was thrown. I agree with the call to throw a caution. You have to. I just wish there would have been more of a proactive approach to it. I know there's some times where we get upset that there's a caution thrown prematurely. They're a little trigger happy with that, but I think the right call would have been to throw it before we got that 1 to go, and we would have restacked the field, gotten Preece off the track. That's just my opinion though, but that was one controversy at the end of the race. Now onto the controversy with how this race was won by Denny Hamlin. With 7 to go, Hamlin kind of slid Larson up the racetrack, put him into the wall, and this is kind of similar to what he did to Chastain last year, except for Chastain things ended pretty poorly. But for Larson though, just ran into the wall and it made him lose several positions. In Hamlin's view, he did not touch Kyle Larson and he left Larson in lane and continued to race him hard but respectfully. On the broadcast, though, what viewers saw and what the commentators in the booth saw, Denny Hamlin clearly made contact with Larson. On that same lap, there was a caution thrown for Justin Haley, who had a very hard hit on the track, and during that caution lap, Kyle Larson ended up door slamming Hamlin, showing his displeasure. What's interesting about these dynamics is that off the track, Larson and Hamlin are otherwise really good friends, but Larson said after this instance, it's gonna change the way he races Hamlin in the future. If he has to race a certain way to get respect back, he's gonna have to do that. Larson also said he's never had to apologize to Hamlin for how he's raced him on the track. However, Hamlin has had to apologize to Larson about how Hamlin's raced Larson on the track. So there's another dynamic there. And at this point, Larson's like, I gotta protect my team. I gotta protect myself on the track because clearly I'm not being raced with the same respect that I'm giving. On the flip side of that, though, to play devil's advocate just a little bit, in this case, Denny, I think, is clearly kind of in the wrong here. I mean, he's not the victim in this case, kind of like Kyle Petty had said on the broadcast. I agree with that. However, I would not say that Larson is totally a clean racer. He's an aggressive racer, and we've seen him play kind of the same moves that Hamlin played on him this past weekend at Pocono. I found a compilation on TikTok, essentially, of 4 to 5 moments from last year alone where Larson had been running drivers up the wall or down the racetrack to get track position or even to get a win. I'm thinking instantly there was a moment between Larson and his teammate Chase Elliott to get a win or to get position. So that within itself, Larson's not immune to the same type of criticism that I think we give Denny Hamlin. I do think a lot of this is because it's Denny Hamlin. He's not really the most liked driver. Larson is a very liked driver. So if we flip the roles, I don't know if the reactions would have been the same necessarily. But that's also my opinion, and it's an opinion, so don't come after me in the comments, but it's an opinion. But in this case, though, I think Hamlin is technically in the wrong, and I think Larson has every right to be mad in this case. I do also see it as a case of just aggressive racing for the win. It wasn't out of malice. It wasn't out of spite. It was clearly, this is the win, I'm going for it, and Hamlin made a move that was otherwise not the best. But overall, just moving forward, it's going to be interesting to see the dynamics between these two drivers on the track and how they're going to race each other, especially going into Richmond, where Denny Hamlin's really, really good. Hendrick Motorsports tends to have some strength there as well. So we'll have to see how this all shakes out going into this coming weekend. That's enough with those incidents, though. Let's talk about the rest of your results, starting with the second place finisher of Tyler Reddick, finally able to put together a solid day, got stage points in both stages, much needed for his playoff position, so really solid there. We have Truex in third, Harvick in fourth. Great calls by the 4-team, pit strategy-wise. And in fifth, we have Ty Gibbs. And remember, last year he made his Cup Series debut at Pocono following the injury for Kurt Busch, and he was able to follow it up this year with a top 5 finish and solidly in the top 5. It wasn't by chance, it wasn't luck. He was able to maintain like a top 10 position pretty much all day long, which was great. And also great for Joe Gibbs Racing. Each one of their cars finished in the top 6 with Christopher Bell in the 6th position, and Bell fought back from a lot on Sunday, so very good for that Toyota team. And for 23XI as well, of course, Tyler Reddick in the 2nd position and Bubba Wallace in the 11th position. So overall, not bad for all of Toyota as a whole. And we'll get to Bubba Wallace and talk about him in a few minutes. Great days for the 7th, 8th, and 9th place finishers. Stenhouse in 7th, Burton in 8th. This is his first top 10 since Darlington. In 9th, we have Eric Jones. And I want to talk about Eric Jones for a second because the past 3 weeks, he's actually shown a lot more consistency, which is much needed for that Legacy Motor Club team. Atlanta, he posted an 11th place finish. Same type of finish when he posted at New Hampshire. This weekend, a 9th place finish. So we're seeing him kind of move up. He's a bit more consistent, and that's exactly what this team needs. They have had a pretty rough season, to say the least. So very good moving forward for Eric Jones. And finally, in the 10th position, we have Chase Elliott. Unfortunate for him, though, he did not capture stage points during the day. So we'll get to points in a little bit, but I want to talk about some other finishing positions that are very notable, and this involves some wrecks as well. First up, talking about Austin Dillon in the 34th position. This was one of the main storylines to come out of this race. We saw Austin Dillon throw the helmet at Reddick's car, but why? Around lap 106, Austin Dillon made heavy contact with the wall. Glad he was able to climb out of the car under his own power. This happened after going 3 wide with him, Tyler Reddick on his inside, and Brad Keselowski on his outside. And when viewing this wreck, it looked like Austin Dillon's car actually came down onto Tyler Reddick's. Reddick was holding his line. He had that line, he had that spot, and whether Austin Dillon didn't see him or was just trying to be aggressive to get that spot for himself, I don't know what happened there, but it was clear Reddick had the spot. Austin Dillon kind of moved down the track, and after that contact, it sent him into the wall. This incident kind of reminded me of what happened between Austin Cindric and Austin Dillon at Gateway. The same type of maybe misunderstanding of the situation, 2 drivers going for one spot, and it didn't work out for Austin Dillon. As I said, though, Austin Dillon clearly frustrated tried to throw his helmet at Tyler Reddick's car. It missed. NASCAR is going to look at this for a potential fine or penalty. I don't think we're going to get anything from it, especially if we look at prior incidents like this, like 2012, Tony Stewart at Bristol threw his helmet. There was no fine or penalty. The only thing I think that could result in a penalty or fine from this is that Dillon approached a hot track. They were under caution. They were going around. So that could be something that comes up during this. Otherwise, I think Austin Dillon is going to go from this fine, but we'll see when the penalty report comes out this week. Comments from the drivers. Austin Dillon said he will be looking at SMT data about this, and he said that he had a right to hold his own lane, and Tyler Reddick went into the turn way too deep and gave Reddick no option but to go up the track and into Austin Dillon. Tyler Reddick, in his post-race interview, pretty calm. He said he wasn't trying to squeeze Austin Dillon or run him up the track. So overall for this, in my opinion, I think this is another racing incident between Austin Dillon and another driver that's, I think, misunderstood or just goes poorly in Austin Dillon's favor. He's had a rough couple of weeks. Some weeks are okay, some weeks are just not good. So hoping that luck picks up for that team, but that is the incident there with Austin Dillon. And then I gotta talk about Team Penske as a whole, because this weekend could have been fantastic for that whole organization. Instead, it was not. At least the IndyCar side of things were great with Joseph Newgarden winning both races. It was pretty solid for Penske on the IndyCar side of things. NASCAR, though, not so much. And I gotta start by talking about Ryan Blaney. Blaney, for me, was in contention for a top 5 finish, as I usually say on this show. However, again, something ends up happening. It was a mechanical issue this time at the start of stage 3. They had a valve train issue, and there was nothing the team could do to fix it, so we just had to ride out the rest of the day. He ended up finishing the race in the 30th position. However, he was able to get stage points in the second stage. So that saved his day a little bit, but not quite. Austin Cindric qualified in the 9th position, and they announced on the broadcast and even just during the practice and qualifying broadcast as well that Cindric is going to be trying to run more of Logano's setup, see if that does something different, provides them more speed, just changes things up for that team, who has otherwise been very inconsistent, has not gotten the results at all that we think a Penske car should have. Overall, was not a good day. He just kept falling back through the field. He was not really able to make gains. He had some run-ins with other drivers. I'm thinking Stenhouse in particular. No stage points, not a good finish. A day to forget for that 2 team. And for Joey Logano, the winner of stage 1, my race-winning pick, I thought he was going to do great for at least a top 3. Unfortunately, though, to begin stage 2, he was caught up in a wreck. And there's a lot to unpack with this here. I don't know if you guys have heard his in-car radio for this wreck afterwards when they were trying to tow his car away. I'm not going to share this with you in this video because there's a lot of language there. Look it up on your own, but look it up. For Joey Logano, though, I think he was rightfully frustrated. I mean, his car was stranded with 4 flats on the track, and you're going to get your car towed, but when your car gets towed back around that 2.5 mile track, it's going to cause some more damage that otherwise would not happen to the car. In Logano's case, he was like, maybe NASCAR needs to bring 4 tires, you change them there, and then you take the car back to pit road. He had some ideas that I think are worth considering by NASCAR. I think there's maybe a better way to go about getting the cars back to pit road, trying to minimize the damage when they have those 4 flats on the track. So that's something I think NASCAR needs to continue working on. But unfortunately for Logano, just the damage was too much and it ended his day. And as for Daniel Suarez finishing in the 36th position, he was involved in the wreck that Logano was part of. It looked like Tyler Reddick kind of came down onto Logano's car and it started to cause that multi-car wreck. And unfortunately, Logano was kind of put in the mix of that. Same thing with other drivers who are around that cutoff bubble with Michael McDowell and Bubba Wallace. And for those 3 drivers, having a bad day is not an option with how close points were going into this race. Wallace, like I said earlier, was able to recover for an 11th place finish. Michael McDowell ended up having a 19th place finish, though I think he probably could have ended the day a little bit better. And Daniel Suarez did not finish this race, which means the points gap widens quite a bit. Remember, last week, Bubba Wallace was +2 to the good. Michael McDowell was +1 to the good. Now, take a look at how things shake up. Wallace is now +26 to the good, 15th in the playoff standings, while McDowell is right behind him, +17 to the good. And AJ Allmendinger moves up to 17th on the playoff grid, -17, while Daniel Suarez loses ground. It is now -23 to the good. And Ty Gibbs, having a top 5 finish, goes from -41 below that cutoff line after Loudon to -28 below that line following this race at Pocono. Again, that consistency is helping him out. I think he has a strong chance to be able to point his way into the playoffs. And a reminder about the battle for the regular season title, Truex now has a 30-point advantage over William Byron, so that's where things stand there. So Pocono, the tricky triangle, definitely tripped some drivers up, and it definitely shook up the playoff standings. It's night and day going in from what we had at Loudon to this race. It spread out the points a little bit more. Going into our race rating, this race had some really funky pacing. It was just, the cautions lasted a really long time, which meant that we were paused for quite a bit of time on the track before we got going back to green. And just how everything fell was weird, but the racing product itself was actually pretty good. For me, though, I think my favorite part about this race was seeing the strategies play out, especially if we had a 2-tire call as opposed to a 4-tire call to save time on pit road to get a driver out in front of the pack or to get a driver out of pit road sooner to close that gap to the lead. We also had fuel strategy into play, and I love races with fuel strategy. So that was exciting too, seeing some drivers short pit a stage to be able to get themselves better position moving forward. Also just trying to figure out when the cautions would fall. I thought this was a fantastic race because of all of the mind games that Pocono played with these teams, with these crews. and even just us in general. It was a very dramatic race. The broadcast for this race was also great, and the fans at Pocono were really into this race. I would say on par with Chicago a little bit. You heard the fans throughout the entirety of the event, cheering, booing, whatever it may be. It was a very active crowd, which I think is very good, especially because this is a sold-out crowd. So good job for Pocono. The facility is also gorgeous looking. I would love to go there someday. But the racing, the strategy, even just the drama and the chaos make this race really solid for me. Though the pacing was off, I have to give this race probably a 73%, ranking this above the yellow line. Really good for Pocono. I missed those doubleheader weekends, but you know what? We will take it for now. I think one date on the schedule might be perfect for Pocono moving forward for the Cup Series. We had a lot to break down this episode, but that does it for us here at Above the Yellow Line. Make sure to follow us on our social media pages to get up to date with the latest NASCAR content, as well as TobyChristieCom for more motorsports content from the whole Toby Christie team. Like I said, we go to Richmond this coming weekend. It is going to be fun to see all these storylines play out and see if there's a little bit of payback on the docket for these drivers. But that does it for us here. Thank you all so much for the support, and until next time, I'll see ya. Bye. Want to watch more great NASCAR content? Make sure to click on the videos on the screen and click the link in the description.